Tribe of Names, this is Simon here. Welcome back to the channel. And today we are talking about our favorite Rush albums from the 80s and maybe a little bit of the 90s. We've got Scott on drums here. Say hello, Scott.
How's it going, everybody?
We've got Carl on guitar.
Good evening.
And we've got Tom on bass.
Evening, all.
So who wants to start?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go first, and then
All
we can go back in time because
Oh,
I
wow,
am
look-
Good one.
Like
I
a
am the,
time machine.
like a time machine.
Time machine.
Exactly. Because I have the latest dated pick of the records. I wanted to talk about Roll the Bones. Rush's Roll the Bones. Love that album for so many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was it was the first tour that I got to see them on. I was really, really lucky to have my friends that pulled me out of listening to, Vanilla Ice and Heavy D and the Boys and all of that terrible, pop music in the early 90s and introduced me to Rush and Zeppelin and Floyd. So I, of course, heard the backlogs, the 2112s and throughout Rush, throughout their catalog. But I was finally old enough I'm going to date myself at 16 to go see Rush for Roll the Bones. It changed everything, man. It changed everything for me. Getting to see Neil live do a drum solo was incredible, beyond words. I don't think I could find words if given enough time to describe how awesome it was. I probably cried.
Yeah.
It never gets old either.
No. And from time, like each time you go see him, you've forgotten how good that is.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here comes the drum solo. I remember how good this was last time. You have no idea how good that was last time.
Yeah. It comes back to, I have a really great memory outside of seeing them live, but it solidified that album at a point in time in my life that it's inescapable. It's always, you hear those songs that have those memories attached to them, and it just takes you right back there. I mean, there's so many different songs that take you back to so many different places. You talk about time machines again, we're still talking about them. But being at an amusement park in high school with some friends, we're on that rock and roller coaster that just goes around in a circle and up and down, and they play music throughout the ride, and they had played Dreamline, and I remember thinking, like, sitting in and buckling in and going, wait, they're
What?
playing Rush, I can't believe this. And it was Dreamline, and the song, it just summed up like the entire day and just kind of like captured youth, and it was just perfect. And to have that connection with a band and with a song and with the music, it's just an amazing thing. And that's gonna stick the album, in my heart for the rest of my life, surely.
I always remember when I went to see them, because they got over to Europe to play that show as well, and it's actually the Roll the Bones tour is actually my favourite tour of theirs that I saw of them on. They were just on fire at that time, and they were getting into that. I don't know whether or not you will agree with me, but somewhere during the mid to late 80s, early 90s, like, they found their mojo with their sense of humor on stage. And I think that Roll the Bones was the for me anyway, was the tour where they sort of where they brought the funny a little bit more from that moment on. And I always remember that I opened the tour program. I've still got it upstairs actually, and they dubbed it the Row the Boats tour.
Nice.
Yeah, always. They always supplied the sense of humor. From at least every time I saw them from that point on. Can't speak to previous experiences really.
It was always there, but it was on a much smaller scale, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be some stuff up on the screens behind it, but most of the goofy stuff that happened was, I think, on stage more for them than the audience.
I think the humorous element was always there, but the thing is, it was early on, it was more hinted at, I'll say my experience, but it was always sort of like, the Three Stooges brought them on, the theme, and, they had Witty Banner. But towards the end, you had the washing machines as the bass amps. You had Alex Lifeson suddenly going off into some weird rant in the middle of La Ville Strangiata, and they're wearing shirts that say Rash. I can't remember if this is when I saw him for Clockwork Angels, but I think Geddy was wearing a T-shirt of Neil Peart's high school picture, and at one point, and he was trying to get Neil's attention throughout the entire show. And you know how Neil's always buckled down and everything. You saw him give one of his rares like at Geddy, So I think they really just upped the ante.
Oh, I can remember when Roll the Bones came out. It was right before my junior year at college, and same thing. The first time I heard Dreamline, it was back before the internet, so you didn't really know when things were happening. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I've got the radio on, and this song starts, and I'm like, "Oh, this is nice." 2 words, and I'm like, "There's a new Rush song." And my roommate at the time was a huge Rush fan too, so we were just glued to it. Neither one of us breathed for 5 minutes, soaked this thing in. Thank God they said, the album's coming out whenever it was, or we probably still wouldn't have breathed. But the first time I heard that song, I was like, that one is something special. That album, there are fantastic moments on that album for me. There are also, was it Neurotica? That was the first time they ever put out a song, and I was like, oh, I wish that wasn't on there.
That was a poor choice.
No, actually, no, it's not Neurotica. What's there's another song on there that I don't know, I just can't get my head around. But
is it Hearsay?
Sorry?
Is it Hearsay?
Hearsay is great. Ghost of a Chance is fantastic.
Yeah, I love that song.
Yeah.
No, Heresy is actually the other song.
Oh, is it Heresy? Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on.
Hearsay, I don't think that's the name of that song. That's a totally different song.
Hershey?
Yeah. But obviously when you first heard the title track and there's rap in it, I'm a white guy from upstate New York. I was a little freaked out by that, I'll tell you. And it took me a while. It actually probably took me until the live show, which we didn't discuss. We may have been at the same. You saw them at the Spectrum, I assume?
Yes.
So I was at that show.
That was the one where I was super excited because that tour they were being open. Primus was opening for them.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to see Primus. And we got to the show and we found out that Candlebox.
Oh,
Catbox, as they became known.
Rush felt let down.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, absolutely crazy moment. But that was, you got me thinking when you said the rap part. Rush may have pioneered nu metal. Like they may have paved the way for Limp Bizkit and all of these other bands by fusing.
Well, except that Faith No More Epic was out by then.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Chili Peppers kind of started the sort of whole thing, but that's off topic.
Yeah, and of course we can go all the way back to Debussy and his sick rhymes as well.
Oh yeah.
And fat beats.
Yeah, the Debussy beatboxing symphony is just
pretty clutch bass too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Preceding that the rap part in Roll the Bones, it leading into it is one of my absolute favorite fills by Neil, where it's this slick double bass roll just goes and cuts off, and it goes into the second half, and he's like, Jack, relax, right at that part. Go back and listen to it. It's really understated, but so perfect in the song.
Yeah.
And it's not one of Neil's big bombastic fills where he's cutting through all the toms. It's just like a little.
It's his orchestration.
It's so good.
But that's definitely the thing that they learned through the 80s and going into the 90s was how to make the most from least. Still like be able to play at your limit, but use it in a way that was a little bit less obtrusive.
One last thing. It is my favorite album cover of theirs.
Oh
That's
yeah.
it.
Okay,
That's it.
it is cool.
That's it.
Cool album.
Love it.
Well, thanks for that, Scott. I think I'm the next one back in the time machine, and I have chosen "Hold Your Fire," which I think was the 86, 87, 87 album, and going from what could conceivably be their one of their better album covers to what I think is one of their not so great album covers, unless you love Red and balls.
Minimalism. Funny you should mention that.
But on the upside, I still think it's got some of the band's most iconic tunes, especially from their 80s period. And I think it's also the album which I personally think has the best 1-2 punch as with regards to first and second track openers, in the form of Force 10 and Time Stands Still. And it's like bang, bang. Two absolute, as far as I'm concerned, two absolute bangers straight out of the gate. And also possibly one of Geddy Lee's most iconic bass lines in Force 10. What do you think?
It's definitely one of his most recognizable in the later period. It's funny because you're mentioning Neil's like subtlety too. Geddy did the same thing where he would be a lead bass player for the song because he knew how to make the bass serve the song. I mean, the burn burn that fits right on top of the song perfectly. It's not obnoxious, and it's actually really has a great earworm to it in terms of a groove. Rush had a way of reinventing the groove.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. It powers it along that bass line.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
just like later on in the album, "Turn the Page."
Oh yeah,
that little bass.
I love that song.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tune, and that bass line that opens it up is just I sat down and taught myself how to play it. It's the coolest thing to play.
Do you know one of the things which I think sets Hold Your Fire out from all of the albums, and I don't know whether or not you feel the same, but production wise, I often felt that as the 70s gave way to the 80s, the production got bigger and bigger and bigger and more anthemic until it got to Hold Your Fire, and then it started to get smaller again but heavier.
Yeah,
I think this is what I call peak synthesizer.
I was going to say the synth plume was in full plume, right?
Yeah, exactly, and not much more so than on the track, which I'm told is the band's least favorite track that they ever recorded, which is Taishan, who apparently they don't like it at all, and which is a real shame because I really liked that. That track, but it's also, and I don't know whether or not you've ever had this, a little bit like Scott when he was talking about Roll the Bones being the first tour he ever saw. It caught me at a perfect moment, and I don't know why, but the reason why I love Hold Your Fire so much is I don't think it's their greatest album, but it's certainly my favorite album, certainly from the 80s, because it caught me at a time of my life which absolutely resonated with me.
That's hugely important with any, I think that's where favorite albums come from for sure.
I think it's another one in the Rush canon too, that like the song sequence was really, I mean, they always thought out the song sequence really well, but that's one particular album where they really knew how to make the transition throughout the album very organic.
But again, we'll talk a little bit more about lyrics, I suppose, during this conversation, but for me, I think there's nothing quite like when you're a kid or when you're growing up and you're a Rush fan, is sitting down to listen to a new Rush album with the lyrics in front of you.
Oh yeah.
And you're getting your mind blown from two separate directions. You're getting this lyrical message and you're getting this music as well, which is going bang, 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 bang.
I couldn't imagine trying to read the lyrics on the inside of a cassette jacket.
Yeah.
Forget it, man. Forget
It's
it.
like
Put it
reading
on
a
a
drug pamphlet, you know.
yeah, put it on a billboard, even with glasses. Like your arms aren't long enough, they're not short enough.
I've got a quick question to ask you guys. I know that uh, they occasionally get guests in, but I think it was the first time in a long time that they actually had an outside artist featuring on on one of the tracks, as with Amy Mann on as Time Stand Still. Can you? I mean, I know who's the guy that played the violin on Losing It.
Ben Mink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Are
yeah,
there any other guests at all?
I mean, Hugh Syme did some keyboards here and there, but
I think he also did the intro to 2112 as well, didn't he?
yeah,
Oh wow.
that's what it was.
Anyway, that's all I have to say about Hold Your Fire. I think we've got if we're going backwards in time, I think Carl's up next, aren't you?
I am indeed. That was it was a toss up when we first started talking about doing this. You know, my two favorite albums of all time by anybody are Hold Your Fire and Power Windows. Simon said, "Hey, I want to do Hold Your Fire," so that made the decision super easy.
So which one are you doing then?
Signals.
I had an opinion about that.
So there are really so many reasons why Power Windows is such a huge thing for me. Do I go into that whole accident story?
Sure, by all
Yeah, no,
In 1985, October 5th of 1985, I had a bicycle accident. And when I have a bicycle accident, it's a serious bicycle accident. I was in the hospital for 8 days. I knocked out 4 teeth, tore off a big chunk of my face. Didn't get a scratch anywhere else in my body. I just went 35 miles an hour straight into the pavement. Almost got run over by a car too at the same time.
Ta-da!
I was going to say that's to boot.
Not a great day, particularly. I had for 3 months after that blazing, blinding headaches because I had a massive concussion, which they didn't really. They probably knew I had a concussion, but they didn't really do anything about concussions back then.
It's the 80s.
Take a
I was,
nap.
I was in the hospital for 8 days. I was back in school the following week, full, just doing everything. I was out riding my bike a week after that. As I'm there in the hospital, my beloved parents knew that I really liked music. They said, is there anything we can get you? And I was like, yeah, get me my Walkman. I'm sitting here in the hospital watching whatever the 1985 equivalent of Maury Povich was.
Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, probably. So they brought me in my Walkman, and I had some cassettes that I was listening to, but Rush Power Windows came out 3 weeks after this happened. The whole time I was sort of recovering from that album sort of became the motivating force, because I was listening to that album going, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of music I like. This is what I want to hear every time. So it became really important to me. Add to that all of this happened in Middletown, New York. And of course, there's a song called Middletown Dreams on that album. First time I heard that song, I was sure it was about me. And that was actually before the accident came out. The local radio station got an advance copy and started playing that probably a month or so before the album came out. So, first time I heard that, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Boy walking with his best friend, he's getting on the bus with his guitar. That's me. So
boy's riding his bike downhill. This doesn't look good.
Yeah, this is bad. Change the station.
Sorry.
But that album definitely did become, the blueprint for music I like.
I was going to say it ties in, just with the cementing, that time in your life. It's just so personal, when you hear that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
I almost want to Photoshop your head onto the kid on the album cover at the window.
Little hair sticking out.
What's stopping you?
Yeah.
I remember I first saw that album cover and I thought, what's Howard Jones doing on a Rush cover?
Yeah, or Skinny Thomas Dolby.
That's the one I keep thinking every time I see that.
The other interesting thing is that they made a live album out of that tour, which was Show of Hands, I think it was.
That was actually the Hold Your Fire tour.
Oh, was it the Hold Your Fire tour? I apologise. Well, anyway, the reason why I make mention of that is that we got talking a little while ago about lead-off tracks, opening tracks, and of course, the lead-off track on that album is Big Money.
Yeah.
And
Love
the one
Big
thing
Money.
I always remember about Big Money, especially on the Show of Hands tour, is near the end there's a coda where they're basically playing the main riff, but it's all instrumental.
Yeah.
And Alex Lifeson gets into this bobbing thing like this, and then basically Geddy Lee gets into it as well, and it then just starts getting more and more aggressive, and and I'm going, they're gonna fall over any second now, and hell's if they're not just playing the song perfectly.
Yeah. I have to shamefully, I think, although it was cool and people dug it. So my band in college, the other guitar player and I used to do that. We didn't play that song, but we I can't remember what song it was we did that on, but we did that at the end of one of our songs, and people loved it.
Oh yeah,
It was the weirdest thing. I mean, now it's like, oh, I can't believe we like ripped that off from Rush. But nobody who was watching us knew where we got it. They thought we came up with it. They thought we were geniuses.
You were just headbangers.
Yeah.
It's not stolen. It's an homage.
It's homage. There you go.
It is now. Then
It's
it's
a tribute.
So, was there any sort of standout tracks apart from Middletown Dreams, Carl, for you?
the Big Money is just a monster of a lead-off song. It hits you so hard. So many cool little things in that song. If you listen to in the second verse, there are all these kind of weird sounds that are just Lifeson making noises in the studio that they kind of laid in there, and a lot of little stuff like that. Territories, of course, Territories. There's that moment in that song where it starts off and you're like, get this cool little groove going, and then there's that bass note that just blows that whole song up. I love that moment.
And there's also that step up where he goes from sort of like sort of pinching out the notes, Alex Lifeson, and then just starts making the guitar scream.
Yes.
Mhm.
And also, because I sat and tried to learn these things on the guitar, that little riff, which seems so simple, is ridiculous to play, especially as many times as he plays it in the song.
I was going to actually ask the other thing I was going to say, because I personally think that this album is one of the best sounding albums that they did. I mean, there are moments in time where you just think, okay, they've nailed it. Now they're moving on, which is, let's face it, what progressive rock bands are supposed to do. They're not supposed to sound like they're in love with the Mellotrons for the whole of the rest of their life. They're supposed to progress.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
one of the things I always think that Rush did very well. They found something, they discovered it, they mined it, they moved on. And I think by the time they reached Power Windows, they'd found another little niche which they could sort of sit inside and occupy, I suppose.
Was that Alex Lifeson potentially like kind of getting used to finding his way in the synthesizers by that point? Do you think was he still struggling with it then?
No, I think he had it right down then. That's
Yeah.
The most important thing to me as a guitar player, because full disclosure, I learned how to play guitar by learning every Rush song up through the Signals album. I started at Finding My Way and ended at, was it Countdown? I had a book that had transcriptions of every single song that they did, and I just learned them all. That's how I learned how to play guitar. And seeing the evolution of Lifeson's guitar style, because he was a functional, reasonably good guitar player, not a great guitar player on the first album, and he made these huge advances as he went along. And then his style completely changed when the keyboards came in. He completely changed his approach to rhythm guitar. And to me, the 80s stuff that he did where he was working around synthesizers, which he complains about and he didn't like, is some of the most genius playing I can think of in a rock situation.
He's one of the unsung heroes, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's a sung hero. I mean, just because everybody knows, the beginning of Spirit of Radio and Tom Sawyer and those things, and Limelight, everybody responds to that. Everybody thinks, wow, he's a great guitar player. He is, but people, I don't think, completely get the extent to which he's a great guitar player. How like just phenomenally creative he was, all the way up, really peaked out in Presto. The guitar parts in Presto are just genius all the way through. And then he kind of started dialing that back as they went a little bit more straight ahead and grungy.
He was really like, when he had to work with the synths, he was sort of like almost like an orchestral composer. He actually worked it, so he almost in many ways was taking on the bass role, in that he was supporting the rhythm while Geddy was still being a bass player. But come on, Geddy was, he did a lot of incredible walking because he had a really supportive guitar player, which is very unusual in any, especially in this band.
Yeah, it is.
But it's very unusual where the bass player and the guitar player work and support each other and let each other breathe and look for the opportunities to do
it. Well, we're certainly back to the earliest point in our travels at this section of their career, and I think, Tom, you're going to sort of like point out an early '80s Rush album which resonates with you.
Yeah, I remember latching on to Rush when a lot of other people did, when Tom Sawyer came out, and suddenly just Rush was everywhere. Suddenly Closer to the Heart, and then Exit Stage Left came out, and that, like, Exit Stage Left brilliantly introduced you to their backlog. All this happened in the span between Moving Pictures and Signals. So by the time I got to Signals, it was an album that it was my first Rush album that I had my stamp of discovery on. This was the one I was going to get to see the tour for Signals. And so, I mean, you said it earlier that Rush sort of always moved with the times. They were genuinely influenced by the changes in music. If you listen to interviews with them in the early '80s, they were fans of Ultravox. They were fans of the Police. They had their thumb on the pulse, and they were listening to it and enjoying it. I think Signals was their first move into sort of, let's dip our feet into pop a little bit, see how accessible we can sort of be. And Subdivisions and New World Man, I would say, as far as Rush goes, those are pretty accessible songs, and very Subdivisions is a very relatable song. But the rest of the album is just, I mean, that was me hearing a Geddy Lee Currently, and hearing a Digital Man, and hearing what he does throughout that ridiculous, oh my God, he does not sit still that entire time, and it's all tasteful and with finesse. They are still Rush, and they never were not Rush, but they always dip their feet into what was current in their own sort of way. They every tour they show that they have some sort of thumb on the pulse of what's current. One tour they had South Park come out and count out Tom Sawyer.
Yep.
At the R40, they had Peter Dinklage and Tom Morello and Jason, somebody his face, the guys in I Love You Man. They did the rap in Roll the Bones. So I mean, that was the first concert where I was like, I just have to follow this for the rest of my life. I will never get tired of this. So and there's just so many songs on Signals that are even the goofy ones. I mean, I always say Countdown is my guilty pleasure. I know it's like, here comes the rocket, but if you're testing your sound system at home and you got that that copter going from speaker to speaker, it's a lot of fun, and it's a great workout song too.
I've always thought it was a great tune. Because it came out, I guess, at the right time of my life. I don't know. I never thought that it was goofy at all. Maybe I'm too much of a nerd. I don't know.
The one thing I will tell you is that for me, it's got one of the best misheard lyrics, which is from I think the Analog Kid, where the line I thought it was for years with is the boy lies in the grass with one leg stuck between his teeth. I think I got into the 2000s before I actually
This
realized.
song's about yoga.
Wait, it can't be that. Let me look this up.
To this day, I want it to
Wait a
be.
minute.
Also, one of the I think it was also the last album that was produced by Terry Brown.
Yeah, it was the last.
Oh, you really? I didn't know that.
It's weird because once you know that, you can really see the change in the just overall sheen. Like in my head, Peter Collins just put a huge edge on everything they did, starting with Grace Under Pressure. And there's sort of a round analog quality to Signals that is fantastic and warm and rewards you if you listen to it at crazy head crush volumes. One of the things that I've gotten to do that I'm very happy about, I've owned a PA system for a really long time. So at various times, I've taken the opportunity to set the PA system up and listen to things at real significant volume.
Oh, wow.
Like everybody in my town is listening to Signals.
I guess it's Rush goddamn day again, huh?
Yep. But at its peak, I was at about, I think about 6,000 watts on the mains, and it was a good time. It was a good time. That and Power Windows, Signals and Power Windows.
And of course,
I remember that. I was living in Florida at the time.
Yeah. All of a sudden, one day the birds all showed up.
Yeah.
They didn't fly. They were more like just ejected from the tree. Some caught flight, some went right into the ocean.
The whole eastern seaboard was there for the opening of Club Eisenhart.
Yeah, right. Well, that was the great thing about me living out in the middle of nowhere for a few years. I could get away with it. I didn't really bother anybody. But
that was a dream of mine in high school.
Signals was the first of their albums that came out after I became a fan too, because I was aware of them. My best friend's sister had Moving Pictures on cassette, and whenever she took us someplace, she'd be listening to Moving Pictures or Billy Squier. But she would listen to Moving Pictures, and I hated it. Yeah. And then a friend of mine played Exit Stage Left for me, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And that didn't make the connection of that's who it was until I heard Red Barchetta, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I know that song." And now I don't hate it anymore. But yeah, Signals was the first one that came out, new after I became, and this was like maybe a few weeks before Signals came out. And, hearing Subdivisions the first time was just like, oh, this is that bass note that starts the thing.
Yeah, the floor started moving.
Huge production of the opening of that. Oh, so great. What Simon said about the 1-2 punch at the beginning of the album, Rush are the absolute undisputed kings of that.
Yeah.
Subdivisions and the Analog Kid, Tom Sawyer of Red Barchetta, Big Money Grand Designs, Force 10, Time Stands Still. It's, if you get through the first two songs of a Rush album without having to back up and listen to them again, you're not listening carefully.
I remember enough. Roll the Bones is Dreamline and Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Yeah, right.
It's Bravado, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
And what follows up Show Don't Tell on Presto?
That's what I was just trying to think of.
Oh God!
Because I remember the first time putting on Presto and going, "What's going on here?" And you hear doom, 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 and you turn the volume up. You're like, "What is going on here?" And then,
Chain Lightning.
Running.
Chain Lightning. That's it.
Chain Lightning. Yeah, you're right, Carl. They are the kings of the 1-2 punch. That's got to be their thing. I can't imagine how many of their fans listen to Subdivisions and were like, much like Carl with your experience with Power Windows, where you just listen, you're like, that's me. I'm the kid in the halls. It probably resonated with so many people.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else?
Have to talk about Losing It.
Oh yeah,
of course.
That's a song, of course. it's a song that scares me when I hear it these days. Like, you know, when is this ache in my finger going to start getting in the way? You know, when am I just not going to have the desire to do this? Like, it's going to be just become a chore. You know, what's the line? Some of us are born to rule the world, and then we're going to see. And that's what I think about the words to be. Sadder still to watch it die than never to have known. You're going to edit this anyway, or maybe not. All right, edit it backward.
You edit all of your parts together into one separate video.
I do that anyway. I just start talking and I don't shut up. But no, but sadder still to watch it die than never to have known it. That is a line that is very haunting in so many ways. And you know, good for all of them. Ben Mink, they all met a couple, you know, 30 years later and did the song. They never lost it.
My band in college played that song at just about every show we did, which is why we were not popular. but we did it, and there's video evidence. You can go on the internet and you can find me playing that song. It's a great 7 minutes of me staring intently at my hand like this. Like, I don't think I look up for the entire duration of the song.
I don't think there's a jury in the land that would convict you for that one.
It was like right past the edge of where our abilities were, but we were able to just get through it every time.
Yeah, those were the things you were supposed to do, though, you know, always, you know, pushing.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, thanks very much for sort of talking about this. What we must do at some point is we should either pick another decade or pick another band and do this again. Actually, this has been really enjoyable. I really like this.
Yeah. Well, that was fun for me too.
So all that remains to be said is thanks to Scott, to Carl, to Tom, and to all of you out there for sticking with it as long as you have. We'll be back at some time in the near future on the channel. Remember, if you like what you see, please click like and subscribe. And if you want to hit the bell icon as well, that will allow you to be notified whenever new videos come out on the channel. So until then, this is Simon.
This is Tom.
This is Carl.
Scotty! Ha, I beat you.
You got to slap his screen now.
Right.
And we'll see you around next time. Take care.
See ya.
Night, guys.